A very good afternoon to you, Nzinga. We're standing at one of 5 food banks in the province here in Gauteng. And where we are standing, this is the place that is a distribution, packing and collection point. And behind me, Nzinga, I'm just going to move out of shot. Behind me, Nzinga, you can see some of the staff that works at this particular plant. As they go about the conveyor line in packing the food sources. And we know that these are some of the staples that beneficiary families urgently need and will help to provide food relief for them throughout the month. And Nzinga, I'm also going to bring in Mr. Ndweni, who is the Chief Director at Social Development in Gauteng. Mr. Ndweni, thank you so much for joining me. You have a food pack source here. Just talk me through what items are on here and how you've come up with this allocation.
Okay. What we have here is that it's the food pack that is recommended by the dietitians that we work with, the nutritionists that would then say what needs to be in a pack. What you'd have in a normal pack is that it's a pack that will take about a month for a family of 5. You have your mealie meal, which is your edible, your rice, sugar for your things relating to breakfast. And you also have for your hygiene, your soap, and then your juice and other stuff, just to make sure that we have balanced meal. And what you don't see here, it's a 5 kilogram of vegetables that goes into a family every month that we provide, yes.
Mr. Ndweni, thank you so much. If you can just come a little bit closer towards me as the staff is working there. The allocation of the food packs is another contentious issue. How does the department identify which families would be deserving of these food packs, especially in light of the heightened need as a result of the COVID virus and the lockdowns and people having lost their jobs?
Thank you. I think before COVID, it was just standard practice that if a family is needy, and how do we define a needy family? It's those families where you'd find that, firstly, there's no one who's working in that particular family. If there are maybe a Miya salary or income, it's a combined salary of less than 3,600. In some instances, it will be those that have been hit by disaster. So broadly, those has been the areas that we focus on. But with the lockdown and the problems of COVID-19 related, we've seen people losing their jobs, and we had to heighten the delivery of food. And as a result, you had people that just lost their jobs because they were doing a certain job, and ultimately because of the heightened lockdown, they could not be. But it's strictly people that cannot afford food, there's no income in the family, that we prioritize.
Financially, how much does a setup like this cost the province?
So I think before COVID, we were annually, we would spend about 256 million just for food, and then around 20 million for the operations, the logistics and related. And we're grateful with the national government and our national department that also came on board and said because of the heightened need of food, they've given us an additional allocation of 104 million during the course of the year. Hence, you see our food bank is packed, and then as the list comes that we have verified, and then we will give to the needy families.
And it's so important that you're talking about the allocation of 200 million. It's a very important figure. How many families does this feed, or how many people does that feed?
Critical question. I think if you consider that in Gauteng from April to date, we've issued to a region of 673,000 food parcels. Now, if you, on average, consider the fact that each food parcel is consumed, or a family unit of about between 3 to 5 people, you would then realize that we are talking in the region of around not less than 3.3 million from April to date of people that will have not had any food. Through this government intervention, they managed to get the particular food. And I think in this region to date, in Tshwane in particular, it has been around 164,000 people that has received the food parcels. Yeah.
This is such important work that you're doing, but we do know that there have been instances where some of the local councillors who are responsible for distributing the food packs have been implicated or have been alleged to have taken some of the food packs for themselves and for their own personal use. How do you make sure that all the hard work that you've done, the good work that you've done, is not then flushed down the drain by certain elements misusing it for their own gain instead of going to the people who need it the most?
Thank you very much for that question. In the systems that we have in place, we don't have councillors from social development in terms of our processes. We don't have councillors distributing food. But what we do is that councillors and any other public representative will then say, I have this family that is in need. The onus of the assessment of the criteria runs and is squarely on the shoulders of our officials that goes out, do the assessment on the criteria that I've informed, and if you have found that this family is in need, no councillors is involved because it's a public finance management process. We must be fair, we must be transparent, and if a family is given food, you would have the ID numbers that are taken. Why is that so? So that we can also be verified by our monitoring and the outside oversight bodies that will go and check. But what we have found is that you had incidents or instances whereby Good Samaritan will give food to certain community structures, and those community structures will then do things not in a manner that is correct. But from the Department of Social Development, we have tight processes to make sure that everything goes to those that are needed in terms of the criteria, because we are government, we must be fair and transparent.
All right, Mr. Ndweni, thank you so much for speaking to me. If you can just come towards the side. Ndzinga, as Mr. Ndweni is just walking out of shot, I'm just going to ask my camera colleague, Vanessa Langa, to just pan to you and give you an idea of what this particular food bank looks like. You can see that it's piles and piles of packets of food banks, and some of the staff and workers that are working here just taking a small lunch break. They've been busy since this morning, and you can see some of the items that have been allocated and have been donated and have been brought here to this particular food bank. Right over here we see that there is some A's instant porridge. We see that these are piles and piles of it, and this is going to help families that have children, families that do rely on staple foods on a day-to-day, a monthly basis in Zinga. And it's important work that social development is doing, but again, a concern about whether the food packs do go to the necessary communities and whether there is punitive measures put in place for those found to have been taking the food parcels for themselves and not ensuring that they go to those who need it the most. In Zinga.
Nozintombi, Miya, giving us an update from the food bank there. Thanks so much for that report.